Okay, so I just want to walk through the installation of your taller seat rails for your seat on your rower. So in your packaging, you're obviously going to have the 2 seat rails. You're going to have the 4 bolts that we give you, and that's basically what you need in addition to obviously your factory seat that we're going to be replacing the rails on. So for the moment, you can just kind of set these off to the side and your seat rails. This is a oak example. These are actually Oxbridge rails, but I just want to kind of show you what it looks like. So I've included instructions as far as how to get the seat off your rower. It's very straightforward. You just need to loosen the screws at the back of the rower to essentially split the rails a little bit, and then that'll allow you to pull the seat off the rails, and then you can work with it, and then the installation is reverse. You can kind of slide it on and then tighten those rails back up. So the first thing that we need to do is obviously tools. So to get everything apart, you basically need a socket wrench with a 13 mil socket. You can use an impact driver like this, just be careful with it. This works great for removing, but I'll show you on the installation side, you don't really want to crank down with the impact driver. So you can certainly just use a hand tool the whole time. You're also going to need a small flathead screwdriver. This helps with getting the circlips off and prying off these supports. And then lastly, the thing that you might want as well, if you have access to it, is a nailer to help reinstall the wheel shrouds. You can also just use some sort of a stapler or something, or I've had plenty of customers that don't actually reattach these, and that's okay too. As long as it's not rubbing, it's going to be fine from that perspective. So the first thing you want to do is remove the 4 main bolts that go through the rails into the seat. So again, 13 mil socket. We're going to loosen those up. Okay, and now the easiest way to do this as far as parts, what I'll show you here is you have your main bolt, there's a spacer, there is basically the bearing, and then there is actually underneath here as well, there is a small washer. Let me see if I can just kind of show you that. So these are the 3 parts that are on there. The easiest way to do this is essentially to actually do it in one fall swoop so that you don't lose all these parts, but essentially you have your large bolt that goes through, then you're going to have your little washer, and then you're going to have your spacer, and that basically will be the new assembly. So again, the easiest way to do it is actually take this whole assembly off. If you hold this together, you can pull out the old bolt, keeping everything together, insert your new longer bolt, and that way you're not worried about trying to lose that washer underneath there. And so we need to do this with all 4 of these bolts. So we'll go ahead and do that. Set those to the side. Get my last one here. Okay, so now you basically have your 4 new longer bolts for the new seat rails, and then you have basically moved over all the hardware from that perspective. So you can go ahead and just set those off to the side for right now. And as far as the old bolts, these can be discarded or whatever it is that you might want to do with them. Okay, so now this will actually lift right off, and then we have basically the seat assembly. Just go ahead and set that to the side for right now. And then now we need to basically work with this assembly. We need to take this apart so that we can essentially swap in our new taller rail, which you can see is obviously 2 inches taller. So we go from 4.5 to 6.5 inches taller from that perspective. So the way to do this, and I'll kind of lay out, I got this sheet here just to kind of show you, I'll lay out all the parts. I have pictures in the, again, in the instructions, but I know sometimes video is helpful. But essentially what we need to do is there's a circlip or an E-clip here that needs to be removed. So basically first thing we need to do is pull that clip off. So, and I'll kind of lay this out here. So you have that clip, then the wheel comes off. There again, there's actually a washer on the underside, and then there's usually a spacer washer as well. So basically you have the E-clip or circlip, you have the actual wheel that it rides on, there's a black washer, and then this, and then basically now we're down to the shroud. So usually the way I do this, you'll kind of see in the paper, is I will always lay these parts out so that you know kind of the order that they come in. So that's that first wheel. I'll do this again with the other side. Here's where the little small screwdriver comes in handy. So again, we'll lay that out. We'll pull that off. Now again, this black washer is going to stick on there quite often, so that's okay if it stays there. We just want to remember that that black washer goes on the side facing the actual rail. So we've done that. Now here again, we basically have removed everything minus these shrouds. Now this board will actually pull off. So this first rail will come off, and now we've got that one apart. Now we can basically flip this over and do the same thing. So here again, I want to pull these little washers out, the C-clips or E-clips, do the reverse. Same thing on the other side here. If this is being tight, what you can actually do is push down on the wheel, because this spring washer that you're seeing is actually pushing up against the wheel to give some tension. So if it's being difficult, just push down on the wheel, and then that clip will come out. And there again, we have all the wheels. Pull that rail off. And now you have the two axles. You don't need to do anything with these. You can just leave them as is. And essentially that is your seat apart, right? So over here you've got the actual seat, you've got the wheel assemblies, the axles, and the two rails. So now what we need to do is actually take these shrouds and move them over to the new board. So you can see here in the picture or in the video, they're actually nailed on. So the easiest way to get these off is you can actually just take that same little screwdriver that you have, and you can insert it underneath. Just kind of wiggle it under there, and then you can push up, and you can pop those off. So you're going to do that with all four of them. Now I can set this original rail to the side. Again, I'll do the same thing on the other side. You kind of just wiggle it around until you figure out the best place to get under. Usually it's easiest on this far side where it's not nailed. WaterRower does kind of nail these in all different spots, so you'll have to move around a little bit, and then can kind of do it from that perspective. So, so again, now here everything is absolutely disassembled. We have all the parts to basically move them over to the new ones. So we'll go ahead and start working on that aspect. So as far as inside and outside, there isn't. Sometimes I will mark if one side just looks better. I'll put some tape on here and mark it just to kind of tell you to put that to the inside just for aesthetics. But otherwise, these are identical from that perspective. The only difference is obviously there's a top and a bottom, because the axle sits on the bottom, and then your seat mounts on the top. And then obviously the seat bolts actually go all the way through the assembly into the seat. So we need to basically install these new shrouds. Again here, if you don't have a brad nailer or something, you can just set these here and then kind of reassemble everything. But the easiest way to actually do this is to install the first rail back onto the axles, because this just kind of helps line everything up. So now that I have the axles there, I can take the shrouds, put them over, and that kind of tells me where everything needs to be. And then again, you could just reassemble everything at this point if you don't have access to a brad nailer. And the other thing you need to watch out for, if you are going to nail or staple, you can kind of see, is the nails are on this side. You need to be cognizant of where the seat bolts go through, so don't drive a nail on the inside of the axles, because you might drive it into the hole where that bolt has to go through, and that's going to obviously give you some difficulties down the road. So if we're going to re-nail this, we want to nail on the outside. So what I do for that, again, I've got a brad nailer here, and I have 1/2-inch size nails. You don't really need a huge nail for this or a staple. It just really holds the shroud to the actual rail piece. So I've got 1/2-inch pieces in here, and I'm just going to tap 2 nails in, just like we had from the factory. Okay. So now this has been reattached, so it's actually super easy for me then to flip this over, grab the other side, do the same thing here, install the shrouds, make sure everything fits good, and then nail these as well. Okay, so now the shrouds are all reinstalled. I can go ahead and start reassembling from this perspective, again how we laid it out. So the spring washer goes on first, so I'll do these two. Then the wheel, again with the black washer, you can see now it fell off in this one. So spring washer, then the black washer, then the wheel. Same thing on the other side, make sure I have that black washer. And then now the last thing is the clip. So depending on a lot of different things, the clip can either snap in super easy like that, or sometimes again you will have to push down on the wheel to compress that spring clip. And then you just want to make sure that the E-clip or whatever, that center there is actually sitting in this rail. And then just kind of spin your wheels a little bit to make sure that nothing's rubbing. It should be okay. I make a lot of these, so everything's pretty well dimensioned. I usually know what to look for, but sometimes occasionally you can get some rubbing between the wheel and the shroud if things aren't lined up quite right. So you just want to watch out for that. If you have any problems, just shoot me a message or contact me and I'll kind of give you some steps to troubleshoot that. So now again, we can flip it over. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Again, spring washer, then the black washer, and then our wheel. Same thing the other side, black washer, making sure that's there. Install, and then now we can do our clips again. And again, it's easiest to just take your flathead screwdriver to push that clip on. Just like that. Get our last one. And we're good to go. So now we've got all the wheels installed, so now we need to attach these rails to the seat. So I'm going to move my seat back over here. And as far as like orientation, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. There's no front to back from that perspective. The boards can be attached to the seat in any way. We're going to take our longer bolts, kind of set those all in. And then you're going to want to kind of move it around a little bit until the bolts line up with the holes, and then you should be able to get them all started by hand once everything's lined up. So this one's in, this guy's not quite in yet, this guy's in, and this guy's in. So you can see here the bolts are kind of holding the seat. So now is where you want to reinstall them. This is where I want you to be really cautious if you're going to use an impact driver, because as you torque these down, that can actually adjust how flat the seat is sitting, which could potentially, if you did it off or whatever, that would affect when you put it on the rails, it might rock a little bit. So usually what I'll do is I'll crank these down, I'll go over to a flat surface. This workbench is not very flat, so I'll use my table saw or something you have that's flat and check it to make sure it's level from that perspective. So again, if you're going to use an impact wrench, just run it till it's snug. And an impact wrench, obviously that's usually till it starts kind of popping. Okay, so once you've got those installed and kind of torqued down, what I'd recommend is, again, once they start to get snug, then just go in like quarter turn increments. And again, use a flat surface, take it over there, kind of make sure that there isn't any wobble left to right or whatever. And then that'll kind of help you get everything squared up. And then once you've done that, then your seat is installed. And now you've got your new taller rails. Again, the rails are basically 2 inches taller. You can kind of see that. So there's your stock rail and then the new rail. 2 inches gives you a little extra height to kind of match with the footboard that we potentially moved up, unless all you bought was the seat, then that's okay too. So anyways, I hope that video is helpful. I know that I've had a few questions on the seat. This is a little more complicated than any of the footboard installs. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. My contact info is on the instruction sheet, or you can obviously send me a message through my website or Etsy, depending where you ordered. So I hope that's helpful. Again, always appreciate the business, supporting a small business here in Wisconsin, and have a great day and have fun rowing.